Thank you so much. Hello. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to start tonight. I was a bit disappointed. I saw all the barriers and the policemen outside, and I thought they were for me. But apparently there's something called a vote going on at the moment, or has just happened. I was stuck, so I asked my 9-year-old daughter, who's come with me here from America tonight, and she just said, just say, I'm Phil Campbell, hello. But that bit's been done, so I've been down in Dublin a lot in the last year. I've done a lot of talks, so I wanted to make sure I didn't go over the same old stuff with people who have seen me before. So I thought I'd try something a little bit different tonight. I'm going to talk about dinosaurs and other things. Potted biography. Just quickly about me, I suppose I used to be an architect. About 15 years of architecture. I tried to stick to just the fun stuff, like designing Legoland and bars and restaurants. I never did anything serious. Got headhunted in the Domark days about 16 years ago. Lucked my way onto Tomb Raider and Lara Croft, and that kind of gives you a nice career burst getting onto that. So I worked with her for 5 years. Started with Quantic Dream, working with David Bowie on a game that wasn't horribly successful called Nomad Soul, but you had to do that sort of game just to meet Bowie. And worked with Quantic on and off to this day on everything we've done. I started the Quantic office in San Francisco, and we're just about to release Beyond Two Souls next year, which should be a good one. We did Heavy Rain. Meanwhile, I was creative director at EA with the Bond franchise and The Godfather, and I'm going to talk about The Godfather tonight. For the last year, I started a company in Belfast called Inlifesize with my great friend and partner, Greg Maguire. The Baldy get there, just in the... And we are making augmented reality games on the iPhone, on the iPad, that sort of thing. We're doing fairies and dragons and dinosaurs and things like that. But I wanted to make an apology about handheld games first and tell you why I'm talking about dinosaurs tonight. It was a quote, I think, it was a few months ago by the creative director of a game called Assassin's Creed 3, Ubisoft, who said that, oh, this is probably the last of the great dinosaurs. And that really pissed me off. Excuse me, Lily. And dinosaurs are quite cool, I thought, so why? You know, what's so bad about this? And I realized that I'd been working on a lot of what we call freemium. I'm sure you've all heard of the term freemium. We've been using gamification, and we've been creating freemium. I'd worked on a lot of contract killer titles, lots of successful games, but, you know, contract killer to the end, you know, contract killer zombies, contract killer 5, you know, whatever it is. And I realized that this freemium model was killing my passion for games a little. I was being held to ransom. I played a game called CSR Racing, and before I knew it, I'd spent 20 or 30 bucks in that game. And don't get me wrong, absolutely beautiful game, really polished, at the height of freemium. But I started to feel that maybe these games were not being designed on the right principles. Maybe they weren't being designed the way we designed the classic sort of console games. And I've heard all the chat about, I'll get to the slides in a minute. I've heard all the chat about consoles dying and 20% down here and 40% down here. And I realize what this is in this industry, and I've been in it, 16 years now, that this is just the end of a cycle. And there'll be another cycle starting. And in fact, I guess the Wii U is maybe not quite the start of a new cycle, but it's more of a catch-up, perhaps, some of the ways. And, you know, until they have that killer app, maybe it's not quite there yet. But I realized that, you know, Sony and Microsoft, they usually get it right in the second or third attempt, and the next generation of these things is going to be amazing. And I found that all the games I was playing were console games and horror PC games. And I was playing Assassin's Creed 3, Dishonored, and Skyrim, and I was feeling liberated. You know, I'd paid my 60 bucks, I was playing these games, I wasn't being held to ransom, and I started to think about my own dinosaur, which is the Godfather, the game, which is about 5 years old now. And I was thinking about all the processes that I do and the things that I normally talk about, which are how to facilitate the design process, the incredibly long title of this lecture, I can't even remember it, with gratuitously Brando and Bowie thrown in there. And I felt like I wanted to talk about the process of the Godfather game and what I went through with that. And I realized that I didn't want to give you the impression that I was talking about, yes, all of you go out and create a 300-person team, create a AAA title, you know, to mixed reviews, some pretty good ones. And I realized that wasn't the way the industry is going. But then I realized what I did in the Godfather game and my role as the creative director on that. And so what I'm kind of proclaiming tonight in a weird way is how to be an army of one. And that doesn't mean an egotistical, fat Northern Irish designer. It means, you know, how can you facilitate the design process of any game, of any design game or interactive thing you're trying to do. Because I realized that as the creative director for The Godfather, I pretty much started everything. Character design, story, all the dialogue, all the mission designs, all the maps, all the buildings. I used all my architectural background. And then eventually along that process, somebody much more qualified and better comes in and takes those things away from you. And I will hold on to some of those areas, like the writing or whatever. But I realized that if you are the holder of the vision, if you're, you know, if you can maintain that vision and be careful about what bits you let go and pass off and what have you, and you generate the right sort of process work for that vision that really becomes a catalyst for the way the design happens with everybody in the team. And it doesn't matter if it's two people, or me and Greg designing something in the car, or, you know, 250 people working on The Godfather. So I wanted to go through the process of my dinosaur and show you the sort of processes and design stuff that I was doing to try and become this catalyst to get people to share in the vision and to facilitate or kickstart a really good design process. Let's see, I finally changed the slide. So the obvious image of The Godfather is, everybody knows about The Godfather. You know, it's a very difficult license, I think, to start working on because you feel like you have to treat it with such reverence. So subject matter in any field, in any game or any design can be daunting. It doesn't matter if it's your own idea and how the hell you're going to implement it, or something like The Godfather where you don't want to, you know, piss off, you know, millions of people that really, really loved that movie. And of course, the whole notion of pulling strings was the symbol for The Godfather. So here's me thinking, how can I generate a lot of design processes going to get an entire team excited about this, knowing that the resources at the time at EA were really excellent. So I had a lot of good stuff to play with. So here's, this will give you a little bit of an idea. It's one of the trailers for it. This was a game that just bounced over the start of this current generation. So this is Xbox, just got onto Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. So it's a little bit primitive. Oh, and it's also, can children cover their ears? It's an 18 rated. I think it's okay, but...
Don Corleone.
All right.
Can you see that okay?
Sorry, Johnny. It's just business. Give it to him.
Papa?
You are old enough. When the time is right, you will take your revenge.
Hey, kid.
Come on in, welcome.
So I'm sure you see there, it's a kind of melange of things you might recognize, scenes in the movie you might have sort of half recognized, Luca Brasi, you know, and things that we added to the experience, for better or worse. So when I was working on The Godfather, there was 5 basic areas which I was trying to figure out how to get this design started and how to generate this. There was obviously making an authentic Godfather experience, because we knew immediately from the start that we were going to have to expand the experience. This wasn't a 2 or 3 hour movie. This was ultimately a 50-hour you know, game that we had to entertain the player for. And it wasn't about New York between 1945 and 1955. It was about the Godfather New York between 1945 and 55. And then how would you construct this game where you have a game where Sonny always dies at the toll booth? He cannot live, you know. It just wasn't that sort of game where it had these alternate endings where you could save Sonny. That's what James Caan thought was going to happen. You had to figure out how to address that so that the player would not, for example, know that that familiar moment was coming, or how you would work away from it. So I found myself doing a lot of what I call topping and tailing, was taking this original content and then working around it. And you'll see from some of the early drawings I did that I'm working with this strong story spine of the actual movie, the whole movie experience from start to finish, and I'm finding all these great moments, these classic moments that you all remember, the Luca Brasi in the bar, you know, Tessio's betrayal, all these things, and I'm taking that story as this kind of linear path like it was in a movie, and not terribly interactive, and then I'm winding all this new content and this new experience around it. Obviously wanted all this to happen in a living world. This was EA's brief. You know, everyone else was doing living worlds. It was time we did one, an open world game. Dialogue and cinematics, no expense spared at EA again, but how do we get the original people involved, and how do we supplement that with the new people, and then how the hell do we share this process with everybody else? My process in general, and most of these drawings you'll see are mine, involves sharing from day one. You know, trying to be the catalyst for the first time you put your, well, I use a pencil and paper mostly. I'm not terribly digital anymore. But so the first thing I was trying to discover was, how do you discover the beats or the emotional waypoints in your story? So this was the start of what Bing Gordon at EA called totems. These are totems that the design team, you know, and that includes people from all disciplines, gather around these totems like a hot fire. They hate them, they love them, they work with them. I'll draw one every week, you know, and I'll take that kind of deadness of a computerized flowchart out of it, and I'll personalize it, and I'll sweat over it, and I'll draw these endless 11 by 17 sheets. So if you look at the scale of this, that third there is about the size of a what's it in this country? A3, 11 by 17. And I ran the story spine down the middle. So you're only seeing a half of it here. So here's all the missions. The Don is dead, which is when they thought Don Vito had been killed with the oranges and the running across the road. And Tom Hagen was kidnapped and all that stuff. And then onto the sides of it, you'll see all the missions and the things I'm adding and where they appear in the timeline. And this sort of thing really keeps your team up to date with where you are. I remember when we designed Bond, we had the story team, and then we had the mission design team. And I remember there was all sorts of things, like we forgot a whole plot point involving a beautiful Romanian spy. So we ended up saying, well, just put her in the corridor. So you actually meet her and you have your whole interaction with her in the bend of a corridor on your way to the next mission. I mean, these things happen all the time. So as you see the narrative start to expand, that's the full width of the chart, and you'll see that there's a bunch of the famous characters that you know. There's new characters, and I managed to slip in a couple of Irish characters, which I was very proud of. Monk Malone and Francis Malone, who became two of my focal point characters. And again, I was writing the narrative from the point of view of the player being this non-entity who comes in and goes through the mafia experience. He gets promoted and becomes a made man and all that stuff. So he wasn't in the original story, obviously. Now, I'm not sure that that's always the best thing to do, and in fact, I'm really a bit anti it now. But that seemed to be the popular way at the time, is to have a nobody, play a nobody, and play his life's journey. So I also had to give him a supporting cast as well that was unique, but obviously figure out how he interacted with Tom Hagen and all the other famous Godfather characters. So this chart ends up like this, which if you imagine that first 11 by 17 is pretty large, so you needed to have these giant halls of E3 for this one, of EA for this one. But the nice thing was it was all there. It was a design process. I didn't care that I had to draw it once a week. It's quite a lot of work, but it really gets that design flow out there. People start to understand, but they also enjoy it because it's graphic-y and it's kind of fun and kooky, and it doesn't take a lot of drawing skill. So out of that, I mean, this little box where it says story missions, that's the game I wanted to make at first. I wanted to make a 12 or an 18-hour experience for The Godfather. I've preached a lot about what I call golf holes. If you want a current game reference, play Dishonored. It's the worst name for a game in history because it's so hard to remember when you're trying to complement it. But it's a really succinct, it's a hard word to say in a lecture, short series of missions. Connected, it's not an open world, but the world itself, each of them is like a golf hole. Of course, coming from Portrush, that is my connection to golf, where you have a very tangible amount of information to create, right? It's a golf hole. It's not a world that spreads for miles or whatever. It has a very distinct ending. It has a destiny. It has a hole. It may be a dog leg. It may be a par 3, whatever the imagery of it is. But the critical point is the player. The way you want people to play this, and this is where Dishonored does so well, is you want to hand them their golf bag of clubs and let them play the way they want to play. So for me, that's, the kind of gameplay I really like right now is, do I want to play stealthily? Do I want to go in with my rocket launcher all guns blazing? So golf holes and the golf bag metaphor really locked that in for me. But again, as I said, EA wanted the full 50 hours. So we decided to start expanding that out into how we would open up this world, what sort of other mafia activities are connected, what could we do in New York, how the hell are we going to get to LA for one mission involving a horse's head that really you can't leave out. And so basically all the designs and things I'm thinking about making at this point are a whole mixture of all this kind of existing Godfather lore and new features that may be, the sort of things in Grand Theft Auto and what have you that people could do over and over again, like rob banks or what have you. So the first thing I did in this respect when I'm looking at the missions is, again, to do a smaller version of totems. And these drawings are like copied the heck out of, Will Eisner and Jordy Burnett and anything you can get your hands on. But really try and sum up what you're trying to design, a comic book page, is my chosen method, but some way in which people can encapsulate straight away, what this whole thing is about. So this is just 3 random missions, me trying to tell the team, or even clarify for myself, what these different missions were about. You'd have a mission like Michael's Revenge, which obviously it's the famous scene where Michael shoots Sollazzo and the police chief in the restaurant, but how the heck do I incorporate my player into that? And that was an easy one because if you remember from the movie, Clemenza gets the gun placed in the cistern, before the kill. So that was a really easy thing for me to get my player to do, considering Clemenza was the player's tutor and capo at this point. But again, it's like, what do I do before and after this mission? How can I get Michael to this mission and how can I get him out of it? Now, a lot of it may have gone into kind of, shootouts, and suddenly there's more people in the restaurant than you remember from the movie. But the goal with us was always, you had team members coming up and going, I remember that guy. I remember that scene from the movie. Or I remember that guy in the movie, and they weren't there. We just created them. We'd put those people in the restaurant. I went through the book, so obviously trying to gather your sources. And these comic book pages give everything the same weight. So doing a comic book page of a Michael classic Godfather scene, doing a scene that came out of my own head or a scene that came out of the book, gave them all an equal weight and started to create, the design actually had some cohesion about it. So getting a little bit of information about Bonacera's daughter and what happened to the thugs that beat her up afterwards, and again, that gives you a perfect in point. Working on something that was more crucial, which became our kind of trailer and our very first launch and everything, The Dawn is Dead, which was basically when they shot Brando, they shot Don Vito, and he didn't die, of course. But again, how to start with that kernel of a scene, that idea, that waypoint in your head, and how to develop around that. But as long as you nail that point, Brando still runs across the road, gets shot, Fredo is still crying by the side of the car, and then take it from there. And that drawing I did there actually shows you the way we kind of grafted our world onto their world. So there's Genko olive oil from the movie, and that was actually a movie still. And then I just went, whick, and put my barbershop on there, and that's where my player is. So he's in the barbershop. He sees it from exactly the same viewpoint, and then he interacts with that scene. And again, a completely new mission. We actually designed this for a charity. It was weird. We had a kid come in for a charity cause and help us design this, which is a really great experience. So there wasn't as much swearing in this mission as I've put in every Jimmy Caan mission. But again, you just give it equal weight and bring it in and make it part of the experience. And of course, we had 5 families that we had all these extra experiences we could attach to them, the Tatayas, the Cunels, the Stracci, all those guys. So my approach to then designing an open world, and again, it was about a functionality of scale. It wasn't about this endless driving experience, or at least I wished it wasn't. Didn't want that. My mantra was get out and walk. I wanted to focus really clearly on areas of interest. I didn't want you to be driving, forever doing nothing. More about that later. But I wanted to create a world that supported the narrative, that supported the drive of the Godfather movie and all the stories that I'm telling that are weaving in and out and meeting at each of those sort of flashpoints. So trying to figure out what the Corleones, New York City meant. Again, thinking down the line what it's going to be like to play. And this is where I got into my concept of playgrounds, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But also the things that connected the map together, like racket chains, how the whole map was connected. But primarily, what the hell was it that I needed to see that made me believe that was the Corleones' New York City of 1945 and 1955? We never actually got to Decade of Change, but ideally the world would have changed over those 10 years as well. New buildings, et cetera, but we didn't get to that. So we started analyzing the maps. And I started to draw these crazy world maps and start to analyze areas like Brooklyn and Little Italy to see where there had been experiences from the movie. Actually, this was the first map I came up with. Somebody told me, don't ever draw New York sideways again, because you have no idea where that is. And I never did. You took the politics seriously at EA. So this is my map. It's a giant wall chart. Again, it's a totem that people could gather around and laugh at, or, ideally really get into. And it's allowed me to kind of highlight in big words and buildings and that sort of thing where the actual experience in the movie had occurred and how I could start to connect those together to make a really cohesive world and then fill in the gaps. It was my philosophy on Tomb Raider, and it's my philosophy now, is create those moments, those waypoints, and then fill in the gaps. Ideally not with long brown corridors. But just more analysis, where these locations were. We had to make some tough decisions. We did fly to LA for a mission, but that was completely... It was just something you couldn't do without that, the Wiltz mission with the horse's head. And it wasn't successful. But things like the toll booth, where would you integrate these in? And I was a little too anal about this at the time, so I really wanted to be realistic. I wanted to be exactly where Clemenza says, leave the gun, take the cannoli, or whatever. Those bulrushes or those reeds. I wanted that view of the Statue of Liberty to be exactly the same. But I kind of learned over time. I mean, this was like a 4-year game, basically. You have to make a lot of compromises. But you get the feel, you get the effect of it. So initially, I wanted to be very, very realistic. So again, a lot of research always helps. Vintage skyscrapers of the day. Employ a much better architect than myself to come in and do some real drawings and get these things built properly. Identify, again on a budget, there are 5 million skyscrapers in New York. Pick the best 20, and pick the 20 that fit with your experience that you're going to see in the most views. And again, I think it's a golden rule that kind of applies for anything. You know, everyone always talks about branching stories, and we chatted about that last night, about people are seeing 10% of your content sometimes in some of those games. How can we create stories that snap back into place, that drag you back into the meat of the narrative, but make you feel like you haven't been limited in your choices? And that was the whole point about Quantic Dream and Heavy Rain and the sort of stuff in Fahrenheit, the sort of stuff we did there, where we only build the main narrative, and we let you feel like you're snapping out to other experiences, and then we snap you right back. So a lot of detail, and again, just working through a whole series of crazy drawings and maps. This is how the map evolved. Just I thought you might find this interesting. You know, you start to see the areas that really get populated, the areas that really come to the fore, where the families are assigned in that one, and then how you break down each individual area. And then when you become a Ponzi creative director like me, how you can come up and just put a nice little felt tip mark on things and people change stuff for you. That was great. And let's see, spacebar. And those maps became proper professional maps. They took them out of my hands and started to do it properly. And I think the legacy I left here, which is a lesson I learned, was I tried to be way too realistic about New York streets because they were all grid, right? And a driving experience on a grid is just no fun at all. So you'll notice that the bits of the map that I didn't detail out, I think Prima have covered it really well. This was the Prima map in the hints guide. You'll see these kind of chicanes and all these S-bends and curves, and it's kind of this wild part of New York that doesn't exist. But that was the compromise solution to that. How am I doing on time? 20 minutes, something? I don't know. Playgrounds. So moving a grain in. So obviously, in any project where you're thinking about story, and I mean, I'm probably referring mostly to games that have some kind of narrative. So I'm not talking about abstract. I'm not talking about Tetris, although there's a narrative to Tetris, possibly. You know, you're dealing with your story structure. You're either adopting a license or you're coming up with your own. You're figuring out how those things get integrated. You're trying to be a catalyst and sell those ideas to people, to clients, to your team, to anybody that'll listen. And then when it comes down to working into the grain of that, working through the map, trying to figure out how this gameplay is going to work in these spaces. So this is, again, my concept of playgrounds. So first I baffle the team with tons of really obscure architectural phrases like, what was it, offensible space, and I don't know where I heard that, and the modular, and the Tomb Raider was all based on the modular for me. It was a beautiful synthesis of a world and a person, you know, and that's actually what I talk about in my other lectures. In this case, I'm trying to find this perfect grain for New York, for this Godfather experience, where players can go into these buildings and just have a lot of fun. And actually, I don't even know if it shows in the final version so much, but I ended up designing 45 different modular kits for the game and then just launching them and letting people put the pieces together. We ended up with 7, I think, in the game. But you'd hardly notice. I mean, there still feels like there's a lot of variety. But basically, coming up with a system where I imagined that if you could design, and this is again why the scale of the game doesn't really matter. If I can design a unit, or a hero unit, as a friend here is designing a really beautiful, well, you'll probably not be my friend after this because I'm giving your secrets away. If I can design this unit, let's say it's Lara Croft and it's a module around her, she can jump 2 spaces, she can leap 3 spaces, she can climb that way, whatever number of spaces. If I can create this module around her, this matrix, or around a building, then I just reasoned that by virtue that if I start to expand that I'm just multiplying the experience and I'm really, hopefully not diluting it. So here was a whole bunch of examples of how I'm pushing squares around and the easy shapes to make and how I was going to end up making warehouses and restaurants and nightclubs and shops and grocery stores and everything that became part of it. So here's a few modules that we were working on, me and my architect friends. We were ganging up on everybody else because we were 2 architects. We talked the secret architectural language. This restaurant, for example, on the right-hand side we worked out the exact restaurant where Luca Brasi was killed, and just from the movie, how that restaurant was designed and built. And then we basically used it as a module and flipped it around and created 20 restaurants in the game that were based, or bars that were based on the same principle. And And then in the game, I suppose, just range of experiences, boats in the harbor and then the interiors of the rooms, and look at all this interface crap that's around them, excuse me again. But really just to try and get this playable experience where you take a unit of playability in a way and you expand it to a building, and you put 2 of those together and make a bigger building, and put 3 of those together and make a warehouse, change the textures. Actually, what really happened was it ended up, when the serious environmental designers came on board, I'd done everything too small, because, if you remember Lara Croft's world, like, everything looked great until you put her in a bedroom. And then she had a giant toilet and a really huge blocky bed, and everything was way out of whack. Well, the same thing here was that I'd been so precise in my architectural details that corridors were like normal corridors, and so everything, got fleshed out to game proportion based on the actual movement radius of my character. And again, just related to this then, how do you link this in a cohesive environmental narrative? The racket system, how do you connect the stories through each of these experiences? So as I play and take over one restaurant that's Cuneo, how does that lead me to want to know where that illegal liquor came from? The warehouse. When I get to the warehouse, where did that come from? The docks, and how to create all these connections through the map. So hopefully you're not just wandering aimlessly. But as I can prove with Skyrim, there's nothing wrong with wandering aimlessly sometimes. And then we got really physical with it. We created this kind of board game map room where, again, this is where I wanted this living world, and the guy that actually wasn't living until the guy from the SimCity game, my great friend Mike Perry, came in and started to make it living, because he knew how to do it. So we created these maps, and Mike was driving this where, they'd put the maps out, they'd put different clumps of people, and they'd work out their behaviors, and they'd move them around on the map, and it just basically filled this room. But again, it was this kind of totem where all the designers fed off, and they all kind of circled around and really got immersed with that. There's just another shot of the map room. Now, character immersion. And this was, again, relating this to not necessarily just working with famous actors or anything like that there, but how are your actors supporting the story? Their believability. You have to do a ton of research and all these things, as all us designers know, but how do you make something that's just more than a gunfight game or a racing game? Or we developed this thing called Face to Face, which was our version of Hand to Hand. We even had the nice F2F, which was the fact that, and what Francis Ford Coppola, who initially gave us access to everything, was great. I got to go to his archives and find all those hidden scenes that I could put into the game. But basically, he accused us of turning The Godfather when he saw some rough demos of, there's a lot of shooting and driving and crashing and stuff in it. I mean, it's a game, right? But it turned out that when you play that game, that's not how you're going to succeed. If you go all kind of Jimmy Cagney, white heat, top of the world man on this game, it's just not going to happen for you. You need to negotiate, bribe, talk, shake the guy up a bit. And it's actually turned out that the game was primarily about not killing people, for you to make any progress. So we got James Caan, Robert Duvall, and Marlon Brando back. There wasn't a lot of the original cast left who was still alive. That's the trouble with working with an old license. Pacino wouldn't do it. He said that The Godfather, that was his legacy, and he wasn't going to change that. And then, of course, he went off and did the Scarface game because that was much less important to him. Jimmy Caan was easy. He's still sunny. He says it gets him better seats in restaurants. He's still a very scary man and a lovely man. I remember when I did the script for Jimmy Caan, and I'll try and keep this clean, my producer came to me and said, Phil, there's way too many F words per page here. This is terrible. We are going for an 18 light scene, but so he actually gave me instructions like take out 2 F words per page. So I duly edited the whole script. And of course, we came to the recording session, Jimmy Caan put them all back in, and worse. I mean, jokes in Italian about his privates, all sorts of things that he actually won he was nominated, he didn't win, he was nominated for a gaming Oscar for his performance. He was brilliant. And his attitude to this, which is interesting in the contrast to the way I'll tell you about later with Brando and Duvall, his thing about this was, he said, I love the idea that my kids can play with me after I'm dead. And it was just, so let me show you a scene that he's in, which is really funny because it's a classic scene that I've tinkered with and tried to figure out how to put my hero into the scene with Jimmy Caan and Robert Duvall, add a bit of dialogue at the end. You will see some of the worst exposition dialogue in the world from Duvall, and I think a lot of it's his delivery, it's not my writing, but it was a point in the game where you had to promote the player and you had to announce, so this was something where it's really gamey. But then you write a few fun lines for Jimmy Caan, and ideally it just makes it all right in the end. But again, it's topping and tailing a famous scene. I remember the first time we did the Luca Brasi murder, and it's plain and obvious that there's only 3 people in that room. I think Bruno Tattaglia, Salazzo, or the bar, I can't remember now, and Luca Brasi. And the very first scene we did had the player looking in the window from the outside. And when we showed it to the team, you have this murder, this classic scene, and then you see this little head peeping through the window. I think it actually still does that. So we got laughed out of the room that time. So this one I think is a bit more successful. Let me show you this. May need to be volumed up a wee bit.
No more. Not this time, consigliere. No more meetings, no more discussions, no more Salazzo tricks. You give him one message. I want Salazzo. If not, it's all out war. We go to the mattresses, all right?
Father wouldn't want to hear this. This is business, not personal, Sonny.
They shot my father. That's business? Your ass.
Even the shooting of your father was business, not personal, Sonny.
Well, the business will have to suffer, all right? Listen, Tom, do me a favor. Please, no more advice on how to patch things up. Just help me try to win this thing, okay?
Hey, son, we'd like you to become an associate to the Corleone family.
Exposition.
We can use a man of your abilities representing us out on the streets. The point I want to stress to you, though, if you're going to be one of our associates, is the power of negotiation, okay? Even with the way things are now, especially in times like this, use your head. A lawyer with his briefcase can steal more than 100 men with guns.
Hey, kid, listen. Believe me, if you ever have 100 guys with guns on your side, whatever you do, don't trade them in for some fucking lawyer.
And the nice thing about this, in a way, was that all the cinematics were obviously in-game, the same engine that we were using for the in-game real-time stuff, but it inserted your player character, and you'll see this in a minute. You could customize your own character but everyone made them look like that, basically. But Tom Hagen, Robert Duvall, when he was asked why he did the Godfather game, he simply did this. He was brilliant, though. I mean, he was great. We had to re-record every single line that they did in the movie, too, because they were so much older now that their intonation, their tone had changed a lot, deepened a lot. And Brando, I had the pleasure and the honor of writing the script for Marlon Brando, Don Vito in the game, and I feel like he'd be turning in his grave if he knew that the last script he ever performed was written by this fat Northern Irish non-professional game writer. But we sat in his house in Mulholland Drive for 4 hours. He was very sick. He died 2 weeks later, which was incredibly tragic. We recorded everything, and after he told me off a few times and tried to get more money out of me, which is crazy, you know, I don't have any money. And it's funny because one of the game commodities, and you always have this thing, especially in all this horrible gamification freemium world that we now live in, the commodity in our game was respect. You earned respect, you lost respect, you gained enough respect, you got promoted. And so a lot of my script was, quite rightly, about respect. Brando, and basically every time you see Don Vito in the game, it's like a reward, because he doesn't actually go on missions with you and shoot it out, you know, with the Tattaglias. He basically rewards you with a pat on the back and some man-hugging. So Brando said to me, and I won't do an impersonation because I'm really terrible, but he said to me, this respect, you know, this respect, it's like a rash on my ear. you know, because he was hearing it so much. But he was angling me until we finally became friends about 2 hours in, and it was a fantastic experience. We couldn't use so much of what he generated because I'd written Don Vito from 1945 to 55, so it had the younger Don Vito. It had some flashbacks of Don Vito. He just couldn't manage it. It was too old. But we could use him in the hospital scenes and the older scenes. So here's a little bit here. This was the other joy of doing a property like this, because this is an initiation scene, which there's nothing written in the book, there's nothing shown in the movie, but we researched how you become a made man and how it works. We actually designed this 30-minute sequence. It was crazy, and of course we had to make it 2 minutes. So we realized as long as you got a few of the nice classy words in from Don Vito, a lot of man-hugging you'll see in this. So if you're upset by man-hugging, don't. And your player, basically all the people who've been friends with you in the game are inserted into that cinematic to this point.
There is nothing more important to a man than his family. These men of honor, they too are my family. La Familia Corleone. I now invite you to be reborn as one of us.
Yes, Godfather.
You are now one of our qualified men.
A lot of kissing.
Uomini qualificati. Please, introduce yourself to your brothers.
Hey, hotshot.
Congratulations.
Hands out. Nice. Good for you, kid.
Shaitan.
Glad you're on our side.
Yeah, you see those polygons really flex there. And I think, again, the takeaway from this to a certain extent is, again, the balance. This is the cast, of heights and size. They were pretty much all the same height model, female, male, and just the way we worked it. But it's achieving that integrity of, if you're integrating a license or, making sure your supporting cast and your whole cast work together as one. The beauty of this, again, it was like a paint by numbers, how to design this sort of game with hierarchies and families and stuff, was that every family did have a hierarchy, so all I had to do was fill in the boxes, put in the people that were in the movie, and just fill in the blanks. So that's why we generated all these mysterious Corleone soldiers you never saw in the movie, but become important. The other thing that became really important was at that time there was a lot of this business about, well, the cinematics aren't gameplay, and I want everything to be interactive, and some games nowadays have taken that to a really great level where you really feel like, well, Heavy Rain, you really feel like you're playing, and it's escaped me now, but Drake's Fortune, exactly. Uncharted really does a beautiful job of that. What we discovered in this game was that we would let the player design as goony a character as they wanted, and you'll see a few of them here, but we had a technique where you integrated those with the cinematics, which was really nice because it was always your guy with them in the game. And you couldn't beat that experience. Like when before Sonny dies, he's like your brother. And you're going around town with him, kicking ass and causing trouble, and he gets a lot of chance to swear and, all that stuff. And you're right alongside him enjoying his swearing. And it allowed you to really bond into those characters from the movie. And by the end, I think, hate the ones you're supposed to hate and love the ones you're supposed to love, and feel sad when we don't tell you when the toll booth scene is coming with Sony. It just happens. It's like in the fourth in a string of really great, well, supposedly really great Sony missions, and then boom, he's dead. When they lead Tessio away in the famous scene, what happened after that, that's another thing we developed because you felt a lot of sympathy for Tessio. And at the last minute, we got Abe Vigoda. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's much more famous in America. I think is it Cheers or whatever he was in, but he was like 95 or something. He was the oldest of all the actors, and he was amazing. The guy he just recreated his performance like that, and we actually ended up writing ahead of him, and for as long as we thought maybe he'd die off too, but we kept adding because he was so good. And you never let go of an opportunity like that. If you feel something's rolling, and again, something I talked about with a lot of Irish developers last night, it's great to have a set of rules and a set of guidelines and frameworks for the city and frameworks for the story, But if you feel something's working and it's an exception to the rule, roll with it. If it's, if it's getting you somewhere, because then you'll just develop a whole new rule set. And the communication, I mean, obviously, with me there, talking incessantly, drawing incessantly. I've never finished a drawing in my life. Every single drawing I do is process. Don't do any presentation drawings at all. I just try to make the process drawings look nice so people will actually read them. I do have a technique of every script I write, I put a mention of an elephant in there so I know if people have been reading it. They'll go, this is great, but what's with the elephant? And they're my best friend. It's a really good technique. But we did a lot of sharing techniques, a lot of ways to get all of these people involved in this. And on-the-wall design was a thing that we actually started and had it grow and actually ended up calculating, the impact it had and what formulating it was. But the whole of EA at that point, our whole floor just became this spreading mass of totemic drawings and on-the-wall designs, and people were pinning money to this, thank you. Some of it was fake. But really, every area was explored until it ran out or it hit the ceiling. And then you had a decision, should I stop doing that because it's hit the ceiling, or should I stop doing that because it's no good for the game? Not serious about that one, of course. But then again, there's the world, there's the on-the-wall design, the way it was broken down so you could explain it to some executive and they knew you weren't just messing around. Finally on this, the best thing of all was the fake strategy guide. And again, there's so many parallels to what you can do with this on a smaller team with a smaller effect. It's anticipate what people are going to say about your game, anticipate the App Store reviews, write them, get all your team members to write them. The fake strategy guide not only was a great selling tool for us, but a great way of encapsulating, well, where the hell is the fun in this game and what is going to work? And I knew then the driving wasn't going to work, but there you go. After The Godfather, for me personally, weirdly, as a Northern Irish guy, I became the go-to guy for gangster stuff. I don't know, they must have thought I was Italian. I wrote Tony Montana for MTV, Cribs. I wrote the Cribs episode where he shows him around his mansion. I did such freemium games as Big Time Gangsta. And then again, Contract Killer was, that would be then my whole next slideshow, if we had another hour, is where we're going. But if all else fails, it's back to the whiteboard. The way I'm working now, obviously, criticizing and chastising freemium and gamification and things like that, and all those terms that are, I have no names for my rules and stuff. But Greg and I working on Fairy Magic within Inlifesize, we're trying to do augmented reality, and we're trying to take it step by step at the time. It's in a whole new process again. It's the first thing I've ever owned in my entire design life, which also feels important. I think locks you into that ethic of where the money's coming from, where it's going, and what we're actually designing. This was a design I did for Everything and Nothing. That game I must have designed 4 or 5 times, but this was like an overnight whiteboard. You can see the pens there, so you can see the scale of the thing. And really, I know that the cleaner was going to wipe that off that night, but I just wanted to put that up there, have the team see it. And the really interesting thing is how polarizing things like that can be. If you look like you know what you're doing, or you look like you can do something, or even a semi-good drawing, or a bit of writing, or a story that gets from a beginning through a middle to an end, you have half the team are like kind of jealous or bitter that they didn't get to do that, or it wasn't working in the normal process. You have to be very, very careful how you put these things out there. But then you'll also get half of your team that are wildly excited that something's happening, and they'll scribble on the board, and there's ones that are putting the rude words about me on there, but there's also the ones that are adding to it and changing things. And I always put Northern Ireland in these, like my Tomb Raider Lost Artifact, I tried to set it in Northern Ireland with the green hand of Rathmore, but IDOS took me aside and said, no, try Scotland, that's much more, cool. I don't know what was wrong. But it remained Northern Ireland in my head when I was building it, so you'll see, Dunluce Castle and all the Antrim coast in there. Let's see. And that's pretty much it. Questions? Have I left enough time, or is there too much time for you to ask me questions and grill me and give me some abuse or be nice to me, or any of the difficult questions I'm going to hand over to my 9-year-old, and she'll give you the answer. So. All right. Oh.
Working for such a big company like EA, how much control would they have over game development, and how does it affect the outcome of the game?
The worst part about working, the best part about working for someone like EA, and I worked there for 6 years as a creative director on the Bond franchise and Godfather primarily, is they had a crash, they're professional, but they were being derided every day in the press. Everybody always hated EA. I could never understand it. I guess they had this big corporation feel to them. But they actually employed a lot of the best talent in the world. If you needed a great art director, if you needed a great animation team, they get a lot of people from the movie business. When it actually comes down to designing the game, it's very rare that you got the opportunity, and I guess it's because I was visual and because I was doing this kind of, well, some days to them I was a waterfall, and some days I was a leaky burst pipe. You know, they love to see that kind of effort go out there, and if you can get ahead of them and get the flow out there, it doesn't necessarily lock you into something if you make it look as light as the way I tried to design it, you know, the way I try to make it. There is this thing about designs being threatening. And I think even execs get threatened if something goes too far, too fast, or whatever. But my impression on these big games was always go way, way too far first, and then pull back. Never, ever incrementally get to never far enough, you know. And so I would pitch them this and sell them this every day, but of course politics come in. With a big company like that they're always looking at the bottom line and you know, what the market's doing and stuff, which is probably a good thing, because that's the sort of stuff I wouldn't have time to necessarily think about. I just wanted to do my thing, and with my team, you know, we wanted to do our thing.
Thanks.
Have I scared you all off? Maybe I'm going to have to do that song at the end. That would be worse. But does anybody know I is for the Irish? I'm good at that one. That's my dad's song.
You were saying earlier that the way you created the characters in the Godfather game, that you weren't certain if you'd do that nowadays. Do you know what I mean? You were saying that you kind of created the player can kind of stop themselves at the whole thing. Why? What would you do differently now, and why?
I remember when they asked me about, a good friend of mine, a local hero, Alan Duggan, who was at Neffen Games, and I worked a fair bit with them when I went freelance as a consultant, and we were looking at the Scarface game, and the last thing I wanted to do was, again, that hero's journey over again, the non-entity, because for me it killed the license a little bit. You know, you just weren't involved. I wanted to be Sonny in The Godfather. I wanted to be Don Vito. I wanted to be, and our philosophy with Quantic Dream was that. I mean, obviously that's all original material, but you play the story. You play everybody in the story. When I did Scarface, I wanted it to be, I wanted you to be Tony Montana. That's the role to be, and I wanted you to be on the slippery. I wanted to get you in the most exciting part of the story, where he's top of his empire, you know. And the game design is more like this. It's keeping him off the slippery slope, rather than always this ramp up. I mean, it's just such an accepted way of doing things that I don't know if it, I mean, sometimes it still makes sense, but, you know, the no-name player following the ramp, you know, not as interesting anymore, I don't think. Because it dilutes your experience immediately, unless you can really, truly integrate that character into, like Assassin's Creed, I think, is mildly. I mean, if I could just, I'm 40 hours in. I don't know who here has played Assassin's Creed 3. But beautiful, compelling game, really cleverly promoted, fantastic looking game. I'm in it 40 hours, and I still feel like I'm playing the tutorial. You know, I'm still being guided by the nose to this experience. And I'm playing these no-name characters that they're integrating into the history of America, basically, but I'm not feeling it. You know, maybe it may not change if I was George Washington or I was Benjamin Franklin. It might be even more boring, but do you know what I mean? I still feel peripheral to this game thundering on ahead of me. Is that, or do you have the second part to that question, right? All right. How many people here are actually like designers or creatives or I don't know if any of you have seen my talks before, but to me the techniques, I do this graphic technique. It doesn't have to be graphic, but it's whatever you find can act as a catalyst for other people without alienating them, in whatever scale of project. For me, I stopped building things around Tomb Raider. For Tomb Raider, I built all my own stuff in the engine. It was a fantastic engine. But now I just draw with a pencil. There's no overhead. It's 2 pages every 2 hours or whatever the number is. So if I color it in, it's another 20 minutes. It just keeps churning it out,
So I don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. I'm just rambling. It's a Campbell ramble.
You said that you wrote the script for The Godfather.
Yes.
And you're an architect by trade, and clearly an excellent drawer. But why did you not get a scriptwriter to write the script?
Good question. We did have a script writing consultant, but he was so lazy. That was one of those fortuitous moments where I hadn't been writing any of my narrative up to then. I'd been designing, like in Tomb Raider, there was no writing. I'd draw some stuff, some events out, and then I'd just make it myself. And if I got away with it, great. Or like one time I put Lara, for one of my adventures called Leaving Las Vegas or Missing, whatever it was, I put her in a leopard skin catsuit, and I added 1 pixel, just 1 tiny pixel, because it made her look better. And that was my artist that did that. And I did it in black and white. I thought it'd be clever. It was a whole Elvis vibe. Lara fought against these evil jailhouse rock Elvises and then against these evil Vegas Elvises. And it was just one of those levels where you go, okay, I'll bring the 3 best bosses in Tomb Raider history, the Yeti, the dinosaur, and I forgot the other one last night and I've still forgotten it. And I'll just put them all together. And I got to E3 and they'd been so pleased with me up to that point. All my games had been incredibly successful. They didn't regret giving me royalties or anything. In fact, they gave me a life-size Lara Croft statue instead of money once. But I got to E3 and they said, this won't do. That's Peg Bundy, that's not Lara Croft. So all the team had gone on holiday. I had to go back, fly back to San Francisco, take the pixel out, change the leopard skin script, put it back into color, very badly. And I've completely lost track of your question. I'm sorry, you'll have to ask it to me again. I was going all Tomb Raider on you there. Oh yes, how dare I? How dare I write Godfather? That's right, that was your question. I'm an opportunistic wee git, basically. But I had written a bunch of stuff, and I continue to write now. I got trained very hard the Marvel way when I worked on the scripts for Iron Man and Thor, the games. Had nothing to do with the game design in some ways, thankfully. In other ways, they're okay. But Marvel very hard to work with because they have a method. I mean, there's one Iron Man baddie who's Irish, right? And so I did my scripts my own way. I didn't follow any, format. Such and such a thing didn't happen at page 28, 55, and everybody hated me for that. But I do little pictures and setting and design it interactively, because it's all about alternatives and stuff. And so I wrote accent. I wrote an accent in, and I've never been so hammered in my life as Marvel. You never write an accent into their scripts. Anyway, Godfather, I just started designing the missions, and because I was doing everything at once, the characters, the buildings, the maps, I just was in that position where I'll just write the dialogue in, and then it just stayed there for a bit longer. And funny enough, the dialogue, because I wrote the story, the dialogue, for better or worse, was one of the few things that stayed with me the whole way through. And if it hadn't, I would never have met Brando and Jimmy Caan. So.
You said that you're against the kind of freemium model. Does that mean you're sort of against the whole downloadable content thing?
No, absolutely not. And in fact, you hit that moment in Skyrim or whatever where you hit the DLC thing and you go, is it worth it? The last time I was held to ransom in gaming, unwittingly, was when I played Infogum text adventures, or Level 9, even earlier than that, Level 9. I'm a huge text adventure fan. And there was no internet in those days. So when you got stuck, you're just staring at a piece of metal, or it might as well be a piece of plastic. You're done, unless you sent away and 2 weeks later you got your book of Invisi clues, or. And so I was feeling with freemium, I loved working on Contract Killer 2, Contract Killer Zombies, Contract Killer Zombies 2, and it was a nice side little earner when I'm trying to build things in Inlifesize and do what I really want to do. And the games were polished, they were number ones, they really worked well. Up until level 5, where, you know, I've written this whole story, I've worked on the design from day one. I wasn't the primary designer either of that, but I'm working with these guys as they develop all these freemium techniques, and I'm all happy and going along, and then I realize you can't get past level 5 unless you buy such and such. And I just felt, it doesn't mean I may never do those again, and in fact, our very own Fairy Magic is, you know, you buy it, we're just about to go free, so maybe don't buy it tomorrow. I shouldn't have said that right. I know it, I knew it the minute it came out of my mouth. Yes, buy it tonight. It's on the App Store, and it's worth 69p, right? Or whatever number of euros that is. But you buy additional fairies for additional, you know, talking to fairies and stuff like that. So it's one of those established ways. I just felt that things are being designed the wrong way around. It's a spreadsheet. You know, I look at the Contract Killer and I can imagine the CSR Racing spreadsheet. It was perfectly designed, CSR Racing. It made, what, 18 million in the first week or something? I mean, I wish, but it's a spreadsheet, you know? And ultimately, I think you leave a bad taste. And as a pure designer or as an art form, I think it's killing that, because I love the platform, and I think the platform is one of the new ways, you know, the ways to go. We all know this, it's obvious. I also believe equally, though, that the next generation of consoles, people want that 50-hour experience, and that, whatever Sony do or whatever Microsoft do, it's still going to be your primary Blu-ray player. It's still going to be sitting on top of your television or under your television. It's still going to be your primary entertainment center, where not just your hardcore people are going to be playing it, as we know. I mean, Heavy Rain was one of those games that people might have bought a PlayStation. It's like those moments, Halo, Xbox, you know, the soccer game on Commodore 64, all those gateway products that you just have to have. Heavy Rain, I think, broke down a bunch of barriers in that respect. I mean, I'm rambling again, I know it when I'm doing it. And I'm doing it deliberately to really screw with the video guy. Shall I stop now? I don't know. Shall I go? I don't know. Shall I keep going? But, you know, I'm all for the way we're going, and of course I'm doing augmented reality. My goal is to create something like Fairy Magic, or the next thing after Fairy Magic, which keeps families together. You know, families love to play it together. Mom can play with her kids, and dad. Plus the added bonus that they get to play outside, you know, and they're getting a bit of exercise. That's great. So maybe Fairy Magic, our next one, is going to be more, you know. And then I love the notion that I'm standing there trying to design a game where, you know, this one is this, and then this one is this, and then before you know it, Lily and I are doing Gangnam Style, right, or whatever it's called. She knows all that stuff. I didn't answer your question again, but sorry. I'm famous for that. Well, not famous for that, you know. I'm just, you know, mildly known for that. But I love questions. I mean, please, anything. Well, let's talk about anything. I really do. And I hope the swearing and the 18 and all wasn't, you know.
Well, I've seen all the Godfathers, so.
All right.
If you could make a game of any movie in the whole world, which movie would you pick?
I know immediately. Now, I'm going to tell you a design pitch now. Greg, my partner, will kill me. But I think I've lost control of this already. I don't know if anybody here was at at GIG. I did a keynote start of the year, and I also did a seminar that morning where we took game licenses, movies, and I gave them some really difficult ones like Schindler's List and The Artist. I mean, try to make an iPhone game out of Schindler's List or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So every group got a difficult one, and then they got a no-brainer. I mean, Get Carter. I would love to make the Get Carter game. But with one group, I gave them The Great Escape, right? The classic Christmas movie, feel-good Christmas movie. Just the right length, right? Like 5 hours or whatever it is, you know. Just the right amount of widescreen, everything about that movie. And we tossed a few ideas around, and at lunch, I kind of went on one of my waterfalls and started spewing out ideas, and the guys were working with it. So in the end, the game that they pitched as part of the seminar was this Great Escape game that I was dying to make. But of course, I've lost the rights to it. Now, those guys are all going to need to be paid. I can't remember which company it was that I did it with. But It was basically this game. So imagine this, right? Have you seen The Great Escape? You need to see it this Christmas. It's bound to be on. Just turn left. Look for the sound of music and turn left. It's going to be right there. And Great Escape is a bunch of prisoners escaping from a wartime just a camp. And so the picture I had in my head was a bunch of school kids sitting in class. Now, do not do this, or do not tell your teacher if you do this. Bunch of kids sitting in class with their iPhones, which they're not supposed to have on, you know. And the little brainy ringleader, the Richard Attenborough one with the glasses, you know, that all the other kids call Doc, looks over to one of the other guys and goes like this here. And this guy's over here and he goes, Miss. And he goes, can I go to the bathroom? Okay, I'm sure you're still allowed to go to the bathroom whenever you want. So this one is David McCallum, right? He's the one that takes his iPhone, it's in his pocket, and he gets out in the corridor and he goes like this. And he's shaking the phone, which is the dirt, right? The soil going down, and he's checking for the teacher. The headmaster walks by, and, you know, he's still undercover. And then you've got the couple of sitting in the back of the class, Danny, the Tunnel King, and whoever else, and they're digging with their iPhones. You know? And then you've got the forger, who's kind of got his iPhone down here, and he's going, oh, I can't quite focus on that. But you've got all these roles that the kids, each one is assigned this role, and they're all combining in this wonderful augmented reality shared game to escape school, or to escape whatever they're trying to escape. Don't do this at school, right? Don't film this. But to me, would be the perfect license. If I was given 25 million or whatever to do that, actually, we don't need much, do we, Greg? $500,000? Yeah, I didn't get the Steve McQueen part. You know, it's a little more active. But again, it's just the wonderful opportunities that your phone and your iPad give you. I mean, we have Nightmare. Fairy Magic looks really great. It got fantastic reviews, thank you. It looks great on the iPad. But letting your 6-year-old play outside and by the rocks, you know, down by the sea in Portrush, with your iPad going like this here, I don't know. But we'll get it right next time, you know. So yeah, Great Escape. You've got to catch that one. It's classic. Yeah. Yes.
Just sketch for me, we're lawyers and business people here. I'm sorry. The kind of process that is it similar to the initiation of a film and getting it shaped, and then because a lot of what you've been describing is the feeling and the action and the way the thing works inside the deal, but
well,
just whatever you think you could say about that aspect.
Well, at EA, it's a lottery. It's a gamble, because sometimes you're involved in the process as creative, sometimes you're not. Sometimes the suits do the deal, like in any business. Sometimes your executive producer, who may be your creative, will be doing the deal. Now, I did the very first pitch to Paramount, and from my point of view, I just had to write a really great 2-page story and add a bunch of great pictures and show them to their own faces, you know, what this Godfather game would be like. Because you have one side of EA saying it's a dead license, you know, it's too old, people won't remember it. And on the other hand, you've got people going, well, can you make a really challenging new interactive entertainment with that? So in terms of, in a corporate sense, you're at a wing and a prayer, but really, honestly, my whole focus always is a sell job. It's, you know, it's getting other assets to do drawings that I can't do. And then going down there and pitching it. As to what direction EA go and who they actually start talking to, I mean, I think that discussion started with Paramount over, funny enough, I always wanted to do John Carter, Warlord of Mars. Nothing like the movie, possibly. I mean, it wasn't a huge success, but, and it became The Godfather. I think it was basically just an executive sitting down there and going, oh, you did The Godfather as well. You know, and then that rung somebody's bell. I mean, that's a crappy story about it. But as a smaller company, where you're using those kind of tools to try and get investment, you're trying to get people roped into it, trying to get people enticed into it, the biggest piece of advice I can give a developer, a small developer, is have something in your pocket. I mean, until we had fairy magic, this is what's so great about iPhone games now. Once you have that thing on your phone, it's a game, but whatever state it's finished, you're a walking advertisement for that. You can go into a meeting, you can pitch this, you can show it. Not only do they get the confidence that you can actually make something, even if it's nothing like what they're planning, but you can sell if it looks good, or it's, we're selling the concept of augmented reality, and we try to call it anything but augmented reality when we're in meetings, because that's another of those really horrible words. But I don't know, again, I'm semi-famous for not answering questions. So, Lily, what do you think about that one? That question? Was it too tough for me? Yeah. Do you want to ask me a question? Like, when am I getting fed tonight?
I'm afraid we'll actually have to.
One more quick question. Don't be so mean.
We've closed the doors. The gallery's closed.
Are you putting fairy magic on Android?
Android, yes. If we're doing all sorts of shenanigans, and okay, Greg, I'll be very careful here. We are looking at ways in which we can fund the development of the Android version of fairy magic and what's following it. Just through doing various deals. We'd love to be on Android. I worked a little bit a couple of months ago at Top Secret, so I really can't. I love to talk about it. Google Glass, and we'd love to get on there. I mean, it's a niche market at the minute, and the damn things cost $1,500 or whatever. But that's all based on Android, and a lot of people still think Google Glass is only good for throwing text up in front of a building. Whereas if we can show that there's a whole enhanced, enchanted, whatever reality out there, that maybe we can, do something creative on there. Coming to your phone soon. Or just go and buy one of these. They're really great. They're called iPhones. All right.
We're going to have to leave it there. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Phil Campbell. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.